What's good? It's Woog. Errol Spence Jr. versus Terence Crawford just concluded. I'm going to try to react to this in real time, and it's a lot to take in. I mean, it was very straightforward in terms of the actual result. Now, Terence Crawford stopped Errol Spence like in the 9th round. That part, a lot of people got right. In fact, I wish I bet on the fight in that regard. I mean, I had Terence Crawford winning via 8th to 10th round TKO, but even those who picked Terence Crawford to win and to win via stoppage, I don't think we saw this one-sided a fight taking place. I mean, to be honest, they stopped this in the 9th round, but they could have stopped it a couple rounds sooner. This became pretty tough to watch. And, I was already conflicted. I knew that there was a good chance that somebody was going to get dropped or stopped in this fight. I mean, this was just, the absolute elite versus the elite. And there was so much talk, from the fans of both fighters, almost to where you have like a segmented and siloed boxing community. You had kind of communities kind of pit against one another, pushing their narratives for the longest. And I mean, a lot of it became, pretty unreasonable to the point where, people, talk disrespectfully about these fighters to where it became less about the stylistic matchup and almost kind of like a personal or cultish type of behavior. It was kind of weird to witness, but Spence Crawford, the most important fight of the era, just took place. And this was an absolute bludgeoning. This was a king-making performance, as if he wasn't already, one of the absolute kings of boxing. Terence Crawford put on the performance of a lifetime. I mean, we've seen some pretty damn impressive performances from Terence Crawford over the years, but you don't get better than dominating and then stopping Errol Spence Jr. Dropped him 3 times in the fight, once in, I believe, the 2nd round, and then he dropped him twice in another round. It was maybe the 7th round that featured 2 more knockdowns. And you could call the first one like a balance thing, where it was a shot where Errol Spence didn't see that punch coming at that particular time because Terence Crawford threw the backhand on top of what he already landed, and then he dropped Errol Spence. So, it was kind of like a half hurt knockdown, but it was half, balance and positioning knockdown. But those 2nd and 3rd knockdowns, those were something else, especially that 3rd one. I mean, again, they could have stopped this fight in a few different moments. And, I'm really kind of questioning the prospects of Spence's career going forward. Now, I know that might sound a bit dramatic. After all, this is just one loss, but not all losses are equal. Like, I remember the day that Antonio Margarito, later it became controversially, but stopped Miguel Cotto and the beating that Cotto took. Now, Cotto went on to have a distinguished career even beyond that point and well beyond that point. But during the night of the fight, you just knew that that was one of those fights that just alter a fighter. And I mean, any of the attributes that Errol Spence had coming into this fight that would make this a close, competitive, or as many said, a 50-50 fight. I mean, everybody from the experts to a lot of the boxing channels. I mean, everybody had a pick, but most people agreed that this was supposed to be a very competitive fight where there was a lot of unknown, a lot of what we needed to see play out for our suspicions to be confirmed. Look, as much as I thought, the more I thought about it and then lent the prediction that Terence Crawford was going to win and probably win via stoppage, I wasn't ready to see Errol Spence take this type of a beating. This became, as I said, kind of difficult to watch. And, I don't know. Look, Harvey Dock, the referee, Derek James, the trainer, you can make arguments for why this fight needs to go on. I mean, this would be the last night to circle your wagons and to call it a night, even a little bit prematurely. I mean, this is the one where all the chips are down. This is the moment we've been waiting for. And maybe that was the logic that drew the decision making for the trainer. But then for the ref, I don't know. I've seen Harvey Dock officiate very well. And I mean, for all intents and purposes, he officiated this fight well, minus not stopping it perhaps sooner, or I don't know. When is the exact time? Maybe that 3rd knockdown. Now, that 3rd knockdown happened towards the end of the round. So they kind of gave Errol Spence another chance to recover. But I mean, he was bloodied up by like the second and third round, and nothing was working for him. He couldn't get out of the way of Terence Crawford's meanest shots. And damn, like Terence Crawford is so good. Like, I mean, the timing, I mean, it was a lot of what we were like discussing, those rock, paper, scissors scenarios, but I didn't know that Terence Crawford was going to back him up and win the jab battle. Like, I mean, even in establishing the snappier and faster and better timed jab, I mean, the fight hit a certain point where Errol Spence was uncertain about what to even let out of the holster. Like, he was keeping the jab hand home at a certain point. But to see somebody just get broken round over round, minute over minute, and to just see the level of discouragement kind of set in, and, you know, to Spence's credit, he is one tough guy. Like, I mean, he took, again, I don't know what's going to happen with his career after this beating, but I mean, he hung in there to a fault. I mean, is he going to go to 154? I'm just thinking, like, it's almost like you saw his coordination lessening as the fight proceeded and as he continued to take shots. The jab just got dumber and dumber. Like, you know how they say a smart jab, a sophisticated jab, an educated jab, all of those things. Like, you started to see him just kind of lumber as he would throw a shot, and his feet would be even more out of position, because we knew that one of his vulnerabilities could be not pulling out, you know, after he throws certain shots, even as he's changing levels. And Terence Crawford, in fact, was able to counter on top of those. And again, the impeccable timing, just the shot selection. And, you know, one thing that surprised me about this fight was Terence Crawford started the fight as a southpaw. He didn't even mess around with the real go orthodox for a couple rounds and then switch it up. Yeah, this was thorough. This was a thorough beatdown, an outclassing, and I mean, quite frankly, a very violent affair. And it was a little bit menacing. I mean, even with the ring walks, you know, Eminem, no, he wasn't rapping the lyrics to Lose Yourself, but he walked Crawford in as Crawford had like the fishnet over his shoulder. And there was just something about Crawford's demeanor, even in the press conference. And, you know, I said this in the pre-fight and in the final thoughts video, like, there was something about Errol Spence's almost deferential behavior and attitude towards Terence Crawford where I was unsure, you know, in the last day or two leading into the fight, if Errol Spence truly believed that he was going to win this fight. Because Terence Crawford at least sold me on the idea that he believed, like totally thought, yeah, I'm going to win this fight. Like, there was something about his, I will fight you at lunchtime, I will fight you after school, it don't matter. Whenever you want it, you could bring it. Like, there was something about his attitude in the final 2 days that made me think, man, like, he's really got this quiet killer confidence about him. And, you know, Errol Spence is almost reacting to that energy. And it was weird. Even Errol Spence, you know, when Jim Gray goes backstage, talks with the fighters. I mean, again, I don't want to make too much out of anything, but I wonder if there was a mental edge, being that Terence Crawford was the one who really wanted the fight. Yes, Errol Spence had to move heaven and earth too to make it happen, but boy, it was after years of kind of icing Terence Crawford, or at least Terence Crawford being iced out of the situation. So Errol Spence has known how much Terence Crawford seemingly wants this fight. I just wonder if at the end of the day, Terence Crawford really wanted this fight more than Errol Spence wanted this fight. And for these reasons, because in those, you know, hot hands, like scenarios where it's a millisecond judgment, you've got to just react in the moment. And it's, again, rock, paper, scissors, whatever you want to call it, where it's almost like, you know, one person is going to choke the person up top and then looks down and realize they already had a knife in their belly. It's that meticulous, or as Richard Dwyer, online boxing analyst, likes to say, adaptive reactive skill set that Terence Crawford held. And, you know, again, I thought that like most did, that this was going to be much more competitive. I thought that Errol Spence would win maybe 4 out of the first 6 rounds and maybe establish the jab, start mixing up the attack high and low, where Terence Crawford is going to have to take some time to figure things out. No, he had this figured out pretty much by the end of the first round. Like, you could arguably give Errol Spence that round. I believe most did. Most people did give Errol Spence most of that first relatively uneventful and inactive round. But everything after that was, Errol Spence eating jabs, walking into jabs, trying to back out and still can't avoid jabs. And then, Terence Crawford started mixing in other shots. And oh man, it even seemed like when Errol Spence would go back on the pursuit, his coordination, Terence Crawford's defense, the way that he was moving and positioning his feet to be out of the way of Errol Spence's best shots. Errol Spence was still trying to stubbornly walk him down in certain scenarios and would continue to just eat punches. This was, oh man, it's going to take a while to digest this one. This was one of those performances for the ages, and as much anticipation that went into the fight, it was almost so dominant, it was anticlimactic, but we got the answers we needed. So if performer B or performer A doesn't meet the moment, that doesn't cheapen the moment, right? And the reason, I want to be clear about this, I really believe that the reason he didn't meet the moment was because of what Terence Crawford was bringing to the table and how he conducted himself in that ring. And again, what I'm worried about is just what we witnessed in Errol Spence's coordination degradation over the course of those 8 to 9 rounds, where you started seeing the sluggishness of his shots and of his feet increase to where, again, when he would throw a shot, he just gave Terence Crawford even more time to counter that. So it was going to be bad enough if Errol Spence maintained his faculties throughout the fight to where he was snappy, at least by Errol Spence's standards. We knew that Terence Crawford could still perhaps counter on top of Errol Spence attacks. But then if you've got a 50% dumbed down Errol Spence, just in terms of his just neurological system, he wasn't moving the same as the fight was going on. That's why, I feel like the ball might have been dropped in the 6th round, 7th round, and the different opportunities there were to stop the fight. And it was because the fight had such big magnitude. So it's almost like, I feel like all parties involved felt that they owed it to Errol Spence to let him go out on a shield. I don't know. I don't think it's that, but to perhaps not doubt the idea that he could perhaps pull himself back into the fight somehow. I'm just trying to wrap my head around what the thinking might have been that allowed this fight to go as far as it went. And again, Errol Spence is as tough as they come. He hit the canvas 3 times, but he was back on his feet, taking even more shots. That finishing sequence looked like it was going to lead to something devastating. And I just didn't want it to end up being something where Terence Crawford then just ends up also, after all of this beating, also puts Errol Spence out, where he's just on his back looking up at the lights. I didn't want that whole combination of tragedies to take place. You know what I mean? So again, this was a thorough beatdown. It's either this or Inoue's win over Stephen Fulton for performance of the year in terms of fighter of the year, number 1 pound for pound. Yes, this performance for me merits number 1 status. Inoue at 2, you could call it a 1A, but Terence Crawford, in my view, is the best fighter in the world right now. Pound for pound, Terence Crawford, what he did at 135, 140, and now how he just topped off at 147. Is he going to then pivot and eventually fight? Well, Jermel's fighting Canelo, so no time soon. Is this rematch clause worth enacting? I know Errol Spence interviewed and said that he wanted to run it back. First of all, I don't think Spence should have been interviewed after this particular beatdown. Again, it's almost like they're treating him like he's like he's a god, and so he must be capable of conducting a post-fight, in-ring interview just after taking that absolute bludgeoning. I'm like, yo, where's the humanity here? We've already asked enough for him to go these 9 rounds. Now he's got to start asking these highly leveraged questions. Well, let's kind of answer this for ourselves. Let's not commit to the yes. I know he said yes, but this is one of those proverbial, I'm going to go back home and talk with my team, talk with my family, and figure it out. This, I believe, should be one of those. But again, you're dealing with it's just the amount of pride. I mean, the guy is so used to winning. Look at his track record. Oh, man. it had to go down how it was supposed to go down, and this is how it went down. Again, I just kind of wish I put up some money. Like, if there was a night to put up money, like, I mean, I wasn't 90% sure that Terence Crawford was going to win, but I felt slightly more than 50% sure. And I don't know, sometimes that will get me to come out of my pocket. Other times it won't. I sat on the sidelines for this one, but I did pick Crawford to win somewhere in the 8th to 10th round. Does Errol Spence Jr. fight again? Like, that is a valid, legitimate question. I just don't know if we will ever see the level of coordination, durability, just all the different things that made Errol Spence throughout the years. Like, I don't know if we get that back. And if we don't get that back, is it worth, after all this money you've made and you still have, hopefully you're okay after, you go back to the hospital, hopefully everything is cool. Not only with his body, with his eye. I hope everything is straight. I hope the concussive damage was as minimal as possible. But I just don't think that we can expect to see a near 100% Errol Spence, be able to string together A-level performances. Now, who knows? I mean, he's proved people wrong before. Maybe he can string together some quality wins after this, but I just think that we have to, and he has to, and him and his team, his family, have to take a long, hard look on whether he should continue fighting after this particular loss. Again, all losses aren't equal. And Terence Crawford is as good as any at picking his shots and maximizing his damage based on the reads that he's making. Like, Errol Spence was, just on the receiving end of that. And we got what we got. Let me know your thoughts. I'm probably going to want to do a live chat tomorrow morning. I still have to synthesize more and more of these thoughts. Everything from the build up to the fight, to the ring walks, to the opening round, to then what transpired, to how long it transpired for. But hats off to Terence Crawford. Again, this was one of those historic performances in a historic fight. This is a significant chapter, end of a chapter, whatever. This resolution was significant to the point where it's almost not even worth, in my view, looking at a rematch. Like what? Like, I mean, I get it. If anybody deserves it, just in terms of what they've accomplished to this point, is somebody like Errol Spence. But if we're looking at the performance and how non-competitive this fight turned out being, I just don't see why they run it back. I mean, they could try to sell it at 154 if Terence Crawford, I guess, kind of wants to do Spence that favor and agree to fight Spence where Spence wants to fight because of, his difficulty in continuing to make 147. What's in it for Crawford? Well, I mean, a lot of money if the public's willing to buy that fight, and if they will. It's not that tough to sell the boxing public. Now, I do think that it's going to be a tough sell getting non-hardcore boxing fans to think that Spence really has a chance, even if it's at 154. But we'll see what narratives, what comments, what we hear out of the multiple camps. But yeah, I hope that, Terence Crawford, I think it's his mom's birthday too. I hope that they all take this one in. And it's been a long time coming, man. Like, it was not an easy road for Terence Crawford to get all of the respect that he has deserved and now damn sure deserves. And he just had to, prove doubters wrong chunk by chunk. And, it's every step along the way, you will continue to have, but, and that's normal. I mean, again, styles make fights. So who knows? Depending on who he fights in his next fight, you might also get, some people who think that the other opponent might win, and they're not invalid. And it depends who the matchup is. But what I'm saying is Terence Crawford did not get a lot of opportunity in the boxing elite just handed to him. I mean, quite frankly, he signed with the wrong side, basically, like in terms of the opponents that they had to offer up beyond 135 and 140. That trajectory was cool. But once he got to 147, they just had to get very creative in their matchmaking. Let's get a over the hill Amir Khan. Kell Brook, you down? Jeff Horn, I think, was a good debut opponent at 147. Like, a lot of people knocked that win. It's like, anyway, but we, the boxing public, pretty much saw what we needed to see out of this fight. And I want to hear your guys' comments. I was in shock that it became abundantly clear early. Like when they started trading certain jabs, I'm just looking at this like, uh-oh, you know, for Errol Spence. And then you started seeing him on the retreat. You started seeing him kind of, you know, dipping low to try to get out of the way of punches. And then Crawford with his long arms able to still shoot the punches over the top and still connect flush when, you know, Spence is trying to bend his legs and his waist totally out of the way and still eating the punch. Man, Crawford's arsenal, his IQ, it's just off the chains. Like this is an all-timer we're talking about. This is a generational great. And I think that a lot of people who thought Spence was going to win had just seen the way he had gone about his business throughout his career and just thought that it's Errol Spence. I mean, we have reason to trust that Errol Spence will figure out a way to stick with his skill set and get the job done. You know, a lot of people felt that, but by the second round, it was just like, whew, I don't know what Spence is going to do to turn this one around, because he's not that one punch out of nowhere, you know what I mean, type of guy. He's kind of a steamroller. When he starts getting rolling downhill, you're in trouble if his skill set is working for him in that fight. And it basically did in just about every fight except for this one. And boy, did it not work in this one. But yeah, let me know your thoughts just on the fight, on Errol Spence's fight career going forward, on Terence Crawford's place in history, and where does Terence Crawford go from here? Is there any appetite for a rematch? Let me know all things Spence Crawford in the comments. And yeah, pretty soon we'll get to the Caleb Plant smack on Jamal Charlo. That was wild. But yeah, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.